Good evening, I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. There's fire in the Middle East. There's fire in Tunis, there's fire in Cairo, there's fire in Beirut. Enough for you? There is smoke in Amman. We can't see Riyadh because the king's in Morocco. There's fire in the Middle East. You bet, a lot of people moving. State Department, Foreign Office, everyone moving very quickly. 7 hours ahead of us. There's a big demo planned for within the next hours in Cairo, in Alexandria, and Suez. This is morning prayers. We have confirmation that the morning prayers will be preached by an imam who is associated with the Ikhwan. What is the Ikhwan, and why are you concerned with fire in Cairo? Malcolm Hoenlein of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations joins me right now. Malcolm, there's fire in Cairo, the most populous Arab state, the centerpiece of the Ummah for 1,000 years, the Caliphate of Cairo, the oldest university, the middle class in a mega city of 20 million people ripped by protests. We have the confirmation of the internet shutdown in Cairo, perhaps all of Egypt. Twitter's out, Facebook's out. We have confirmation that 4 to 5 armored divisions have been deployed, preparing for worse ahead. Why does the fire in Cairo threaten Israel, the United States, Europe, the whole of the Mediterranean?
Well, this certainly could become a conflagration. It's something we have warned about for a long time, and those who listened to last week's show or Sunday night know that we specifically cited and anticipated a problem in Egypt after the Tunis uprising, because the young people in Egypt saw this, were inspired by it. Again, the internet didn't cause it, but it gave the vehicle for these disparate groups to mobilize, and demonstrations started, first carrying signs supporting Tunis and the Tunisian people, but it quickly shifted to anti-Mubarak demonstrations with tearing down the signs. The crowds grew bigger, into the thousands, even tens of thousands. The police were out. They had been anticipating it. There were 80,000 and 90,000 people who signed on the internet that they were going to participate. The police began to crack down even before, the security forces, and yet a large crowd, relatively large crowd, did assemble. Now, we have to look at this in the context that this has been an ongoing battle with the Egyptian Brotherhood, which is the mother of all of the Islamist movements.
That is the English translation of the word Ikhwan. Go ahead, Malcolm.
Right, and the Egyptian Brotherhood has tried in various elections, got elected to the parliament, got 20%, 25%. Were knocked down last time because most of the candidates were disqualified. They decided to boycott. But and this has been going off and on for a long time. But with it, we've seen the infiltration of Iran. Just yesterday, Egypt announced the arrest of 19 Al-Qaeda members who had been planning suicide missions at various holy places, and they blamed them for the attack on the Coptic church that took such a heavy toll on January 1st at the services on New Year's.
In Alexandria, the second largest city in Egypt.
Right. Now, these demonstrations have spread to various cities. It's not just Cairo. Many of those cities you don't see reports from because they've been isolated, or media has been isolated. There were reporters who claimed that they were caught up in the mass arrests and beaten by police. What is interesting is if you look carefully, you see that secularists and Islamists are marching together, that this has brought together the disparate groups of the opposition. And an opposition leader came back, our old friend al-Baradei, who is a stooge of the Iranians.
Mohammed al-Baradei was president of the IAEA during much of the Bush administration and very carefully made sure that reports of Iranian nuclear weapons activity was buried in mitigation and hokum.
And many of the reports did not contain the true facts, which were uncovered once he left the office, and his successor from Japan began to really look at the true facts and expose them. What is interesting is that there were quite credible reports that al-Baradei got millions of dollars from the Iranians towards his presidential race in Egypt. He has long been considered a candidate, been out of the country. He came back today to, quote, lead the opposition, and he's being portrayed as a Nobel laureate, as this great reformer, when in fact he's anything but that. He is as corrupt as any politician that Egypt could produce. He is much more radical and would be, for the United States and the West, a very poor choice.
Hosni Mubarak, 82 years old, is the fourth president of Egypt. Since his ascension 30 years ago, there is no vice president. Succession has been the challenge and the struggle in Egypt for some years. It is now conjoined with this succession struggle that we see in Iran, the succession struggle that is obvious in Beirut, and we'll go there next. There's a succession struggle in North Korea. There's succession struggle, and what that leads to is anarchy, which is what we're going to have within hours in the streets of Cairo. I just put this note on. Malcolm has, I have, our other sources have confirmation that Gamal Mubarak, the successor to his father, so-called, is not in Egypt. We have reports within the last hours that he and members of his immediate family are in London. What that means and why his older brother Allah remains in Cairo is unknown. We also have reason to believe that a voice on the cabinet meeting with Hosni Mubarak in these last hours asked for the naming of a vice president. That would be significant because that would be the natural successor. Suleiman, the intelligence chief, is a possibility. So is Tantawi, the head of the army, who is 76 years old. I also mentioned that we have unconfirmed reports that there are mass arrests going on right now as we speak. Off to Beirut, Malcolm, Hezbollah put forward its candidate, a stooge of the Nasrallah, the head of the Hezbollah, within these last days to be the prime minister. Assad Hariri was elbowed aside. In Beirut right now, there is no clear answer to this question. Have we lost Beirut? What is the possibility?
Well, this is a process that's been going on for some time. And again, I think here the West, including the United States, did not pay attention, did not take the right steps. And I think those who say that we support the people in the streets while we want democratization, they are not thinking the consequences. This could be very dire. Egypt, Lebanon, Tunisia, all of them. We have demonstrations, mass demonstrations in Yemen now, in Albania, in many other countries. The instability that will be exploited by Iran and by its agents. And even if they're not the cause, they're certainly going to be the beneficiaries. And we're seeing that now with Mikati's appointment in Lebanon.
The 374th richest man in the world was appointed by Nasrallah to be the prime minister of Beirut.
But is in link with Assad. He's much closer to him, I think, than to Nasrallah. And he announced today, in fact, that he was not going to stop the tribunal. That was one of the conditions supposedly Hezbollah was demanding. Most people are saying it's really a semantic change because Hezbollah has, in fact, been running since they got the 65 of the 126 votes that they needed in order to dominate the parliament and to essentially run the government. And we are seeing now the demonstrations crossing various lines. There was a march by 300 young Christians to counteract the march of the 300 Hezbollah a number of years ago. But they gained both Druze and other people joined them in this. We are seeing, by the way, reports that Hezbollah is shifting arms into Druze, Christian, and Sunni areas.
And what does that mean?
And that could very well mean that they are going to make a move, to put down any kind of reaction or protests. Hariri has already announced he won't join the government. But the Hezbollah expanding its reach and known to have the capacity to take over the country in a matter of hours could be an effort, seeing the rise of an opposition, especially amongst young people, to put it down. I hope the West will learn the lesson and not sit by on this one.
The foreign ministries in London, in Paris, the foreign ministries in Berlin, the State Department in Washington, everyone on alert, because what we have right now in Cairo is a face-off between unknown elements operating at the hands of the jihadists, sometimes called the Muslim Brothers, who are directly linked with Hamas, a terrorist organization. We also have genuine people yearning for liberation and transparency in the Egyptian government. However, we've learned that what follows from the toppling of a dictator is not a democrat, but anarchy, and soon enough, another dictator. I remind you all, as you look for the news in the next days, anyone speaking English is not the next leader. Do not be fooled. Malcolm Hoenlein, Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. That's right, El Baradei speaks English. I'm John Batchelor.